Hello everyone, and welcome to Retro Brick Reviews, where today we'll be taking a look at LEGO Star Wars Set 75283, the Armored Assault Tank, AAT. This set is based on Star Wars The Clone Wars, and it includes 286 pieces, 4 figures, those being 2 minifigures and 2 battle droids, and it retails for about $40 in the United States. And without any further ado, let's begin, starting with the minifigures. She may be no Jedi, but she is still a powerful cyclid of the Force. Here is Ahsoka Tano, based on her appearance in Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 7. This figure has some definite ups, it has some very definite downs as well, but starting with the accessories, you can see that she just has a pair of lightsabers in blue as she wielded in Clone Wars Season 7. And these work, but looking at the sabers that she had in the show, those had a very non-traditional and non-cylindrical hilt shape. So I feel as though it would have looked and felt more accurate if instead of using the standard hilts here, LEGO had instead used the Asajj Ventress hilt design. I think that would have been a lot closer to the hilts we see in the show, but removing those to take a look at the figure itself, I think the main issue here is quite apparent, where the piece for her montrails, her head tails if you'd prefer, is very poor, where they used the Shock T piece, and, well, it has two major problems. For one, they are way too long. They go down all the way to her waist, to her hip piece, when in all actuality they should go maybe halfway down the torso for how long they were at this point in the series. And the other, even more pressing issue, is up here at the top. This silver bit up here, that is her headband, and that should be right cupping her forehead. All of this white space here is completely inaccurate, and it just looks terrible. And in general, this piece is just massive compared to what it should look like for the show. Ideally, LEGO could have made a new mold, but if the budget didn't allow for that, then I think just using the young Ahsoka head tails piece would have worked far better than using a reprinted Shock T piece. And also with the colors, a much more minor issue, but I personally would have preferred if they'd gone with a standard blue for the highlights, the stripes on the montrails, rather than dark blue, because the outfit's already in dark blue, and it all just blends together. But just turning that around to the back, you can see that, like, the production value for the stripes is very well done. And here you can see just how long the one in the back goes down. It's pretty far down her legs. And just, yeah, I really think LEGO needed to go for a different piece for this figure's head tails. But just removing that entirely to take a look at the rest of Ahsoka here, the face print we have is actually quite nice. We have this somewhat cocky smile that definitely fits her character from the Clone Wars. And if we spin this around, we have an alternate face where she is much more aggressive. Not entirely sure about this one, just with the shape of the mouth, it doesn't really give off Ahsoka to me. I don't know, maybe just more of like a frown would have worked, but the very notable thing about the head that I'm a bit iffy on is the eyes, where LEGO has decided to go with bright blue eyes rather than the standard black, and while this doesn't look necessarily bad, I'm just confused as to why. It's not like Ahsoka had, like, major glowing eyes or anything in the show. Like, yeah, she had blue eyes, but so did a bunch of the human characters, and none of them have specially printed blue eyes. So I don't really know why they did this. Again, it doesn't necessarily look bad, it's just weird, and Yeah, that's my main issue. It just is strange to have when it's a feature that is almost entirely omitted from LEGO minifigures unless there is something special going on with the eyes. But moving down to the outfit, the torso and legs, I think that when you remove the head tails, it does actually look really nice. Where the torso print is not super complex, but I think the detailing that is there with the silver up top is quite nice looking. I like that. It is very reflective, which means it does only show up from certain angles, but I like it. And then for her sort of skirt-esque area with that sort of waist armor, I think that also works quite nice when it is reflecting. But again, it is unfortunate because a lot of that detail is covered up by the Leku. Not Leku, those are Twi'leks. The Montrails, sorry. And so, again, I think that the head tails really do mess with this figure a lot. Because, like, my only other real issue with it, major issue, is that I don't like that the legs are printed on light gray, because I don't think her boots were that light. I personally would have gone with dark gray or maybe even gunmetal, because this does look really light and pretty awkward from the sides and back. Like, this isn't, like, I know that double molding would have been ideal, but I don't expect it from LEGO Star Wars, so I would just like if they would start choosing the base colors more smartly, because between this and the 2020 Obi-Wan figure, I feel as though LEGO Star Wars does have a lot of issues with just picking bad colors to be the base of the leg prints. Oh, and then the back print on Ahsoka's torso is also pretty nice. I like this. It basically just continues the detailing from the front, but I really like the detailing on the front. So yeah, that is the Ahsoka Tano minifigure for this set and for the Clone Wars Season 7, and overall it is fine. Again, it's not a terrible figure or anything, but personally I am disappointed by it. The eyes are a fairly minor issue, but one that definitely stands out compared to other figures, but this figure is just really destroyed by that piece for the Montrails that is reused from Shock T and does not at all work for Ahsoka. In general, I think this piece needs to get a redesign because you have that massive forehead area that was originally because LEGO printed Shock T's forehead up high onto that piece, which also looked bad. But now with no forehead, you just have this massive white space for no reason that is completely inaccurate to how the head tails actually look in Star Wars. So this piece definitely needs a redesign, and if it wasn't in the budget for this set, LEGO should have just used the original Ahsoka head tails from 2008. Because this does not work, and it does really screw with the figure, unfortunately. But overall, aside from that, I think this is a fairly good Ahsoka minifigure. Still not fantastic, but good. It's just, those head tails really drag it down. Maybe Ahsoka was intended to be the star of the show, but for myself, and I think for a lot of LEGO Star Wars fans, the most exciting figure here is definitely the 332nd Trooper. For those who haven't seen Clone Wars Season 7, this is, for all intents and purposes, just a 501st Trooper, but one that has been transferred to serve under Ahsoka and has a helmet that has been painted with Ahsoka-like detailings and markings on it in the orange color. And this figure totally fits that, because it's just a 501st Trooper from the 501st Battle Pack, but with a different helmet with the orange design. So starting with the helmet, because it's the only thing of complete uniqueness here, I think this is just a fantastic print LEGO's come up with. Obviously, you just have the massive splash of orange that covers pretty much the entire face, which looks great and contrasts surprisingly well with the blue on the rest of the armor. But then tilting that down to look at the patterns on top, that just looks really nice. Where you just have the patterns of Ahsoka's forehead and her just markings. I really like this. I think LEGO did a great job with this figure. And then you can see that, like the standard 501st Troopers, he just has the cheeks filled in light gray to represent some shading. And then the torso and legs are pretty much, well, not pretty much, they are exactly the same as the standard 501st Trooper prints, which are just the modern, most recent LEGO Clone Trooper designs that are done as a mashup of the animated Clone Wars version and the movie versions, which I think looks quite nice, and this just has that with the blue markings applied. The little triangle on the torso and the knee pads. Definitely of note is the fact that the hip piece on the new Clone Troopers is in white, rather than the black LEGO's been using since 2002, and I think this is a welcome change-up. While it did definitely take some time getting used to, this is much more accurate to the movies than what we've seen prior, and also he gets feet printing. That's just nice. His accessory is a standard black blaster, and then for the back, there aren't any special markings here. This is just the completely standard modern Clone Trooper back printing. And then if you don't know, while the helmet is fantastic, I think that the most exciting thing in general across the board for all of the 2020 Clone Trooper minifigures was that LEGO introduced a brand new Clone Trooper minifigurehead, where it is accurately based on Tamora Morrison's appearance from Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. It is printed on LEGO's standard nougat color, which is great because for so long they've been going with the light nougat color, which is just too light for Tamora Morrison. So it's great to finally have the accurate skin color for this character. And I think all of the detailing is just really well done. It's definitely a big step up over Angry Clone as well, because not only are the details more realistic, less cartoony, but also this figure has a much more neutral facial expression, meaning that it's much more usable in general, both for custom characters if you so wish, but also because you could just have some of your clones with helmets off on like a gunship or a walker, to just have them somewhat relaxing while they're in transport. And it would totally work because this is just a nice neutral face print. I really love this print. It's one of my favorite LEGO face prints in a while. I think it's a perfect likeness to the actor, and it's great to finally get. And overall, I think this is just a really fantastic minifigure we have here for the 332nd Trooper. I have absolutely no complaints. Without a doubt, the best figure of the set. That said, when I say that, I mean absolutely no disrespect to Mr. Roger Roger here, where this set includes 2 AAT Driver battle droids. Although, interestingly, the box only refers to one of them as such, and the other one is just called a standard battle droid. But the 2 figures are entirely identical. So, just looking at one of them, this is another really great battle droid. It's one that is not new for this set, surprisingly, as prior in the year, LEGO had included it in some Kashyyyk sets as a Kashyyyk battle droid, which is technically not wrong, because in the Battlefront 2 video game, this design was used for that purpose, but everywhere else in canon, this is the AAT Driver, and it's great to get 2 of them in the set. Starting off, you can see that this uses the standard LEGO Battle Droid build they've been doing for so many years now, since the very beginning of LEGO Star Wars. But the torso is new in olive green, and even more interestingly, the head, very rarely for these characters, actually gets a good amount of face printing, where you have olive green on the forehead and right under the eyes, and a lot of dark green going all the way down the nose, up to the mouth, which, that is really nice. I really do like getting printing on this headpiece. I know that they've done little bits before for, like, officers and commanders, but this is the first time we've gotten just a bunch of printing, and any printing on the face, really. So that's just really nice, and it's just, it just feels like such a novelty to get such a good print on such a classic, typically unprinted piece. Here you can see him from the back. He's exactly as you'd expect. And his accessory, though, is interesting, because while it is a standard LEGO blaster, unlike the clone, who gets it in the typical black, the droids actually have the blaster in gunmetal dark silver. So that's really neat. That is not a very common color for the piece. I am glad to be getting more of it, and while I feel as though you could go with black or gunmetal metal for the blasters we see in the movies and shows with battle droids, I feel as though either could pass. This just feels a bit nicer, I feel. It adds a bit of premiumness to the battle droids, almost. I don't know, but overall, I really like these guys. They're nothing too complex, but I think the fresh coat of paint we have for battle droids after so many years of getting them is really welcome, and I think LEGO just did a really bang-up job with these guys. Definitely glad to get 2 of them. And this is the last figure in the set, so now let's move on to the build itself. Here we have the CIS Armored Assault Tank from Star Wars The Clone Wars. It should be noted that just for the purposes of this set and how LEGO has it set up, it doesn't make a ton of sense, because with Ahsoka and the 332nd Trooper, they are clearly taken from the Siege of Mandalore. However, the only appearance of the AAT in Clone Wars Season 7 is earlier on in that arc, when it is facing off against the 501st and Anakin. So that is a little questionable, but I am really glad to get an AAT, just because I've always liked this sort of droid tank. From the movies, from The Phantom Menace, which I grew up watching a fair amount, and I really like that movie, even if I know a lot of people don't. But anyway, when this set was first revealed, it got a lot of flack for right up here, the cannon, where, if you can't tell just by looking at it, that is way oversized for what this model is, where most of the AAT is a bit larger, but mostly the same size as the 2015 set. But then the cannon is significantly larger than that. Almost at the same size as the much larger 2009 AAT that a lot of people were immediately comparing this to. And you can really tell just by the length of the barrel, where really it should come to just about the end of the main craft, yet here it extends far beyond that. And personally, I honestly don't really mind this from LEGO. I think this still looks quite nice. To me, this is still very recognizable as the craft. Though I can understand that if you're a real purist for the design, this is definitely probably a turnoff for you. But since we're talking about guns, we can also note its articulation, where the turret can spin a full 360 degrees. And it can also just move up and down pretty much all the way up. So that's neat. Just going with the rest of this area, you can see that you have some nice detailing with the light gray pieces. You have a couple of antennae in the back. And then you have the hatch, which you can just lift up as such. And inside, there is actually space to fit a battle droid, which is nice. And he can actually go all the way down in. And that's why this area is oversized, because LEGO wanted to make it so that he's not just popping out. Because normally on these, the top hatch, you just put a droid in, and he's just standing up in there. Here he's actually sitting all the way down in, and that looks really nice. And in my opinion, that was worth having this area be somewhat oversized just to get that in there. But what's also nice is that if we remove the blaster and fold him up a little, you can actually close this up with your droid inside, so you could totally have him in there, just in the turret, act like he's actually piloting, controlling the gun. And then when you want to have him come out, just lift up the hatch, flip up his head, give him his blaster, and you're good to go. So that's really nice. I love the functionality of that. Moving down to the main fuselage, you can see that you do have the guns on the side, which can rotate up and down, which is nice. However, another major blaster inaccuracy with this build is that this is upside down, where you should have the larger barrel on top and the smaller one on the bottom. Here, LEGO has it flipped. I do not know why for the life of me, but they have that wrong. That said, this is the easiest fix in the world, since all you would have to do is just take this off and flip it the other way. So, really no harm, no foul. I'm just confused as to why it's even an issue in the first place. Moving over, though, you can see that the only stickers in the set are that on each side you have one stickered CIS insignia. And then you have these sloped pieces which close up the main cockpit. And then up at the front, you have these spring shooters, one on each side, and how those work is you just have these dark gray Technic triggers, and you just push back on this piece here, and it fires off your shooter, and it presumably gets lost forever if you're not being very careful. But it's a really nice feature, and I'm glad to have those shooters on this set. They do add a lot for play. But if we move the turret out of the way, we can get to the cockpit, where we just fold up this area, which I should note, another inaccuracy with this build, there are unfortunately a few inaccuracies going on with the set, is that while normally I'm not a huge proponent of stickers, I feel as though you really needed a couple more here, because there's supposed to be a blue stripe going all the way down the front of this. A vertical dark blue stripe going all the way down the front, and obviously here that's not missing. You just have the large circle in the center, and that's it. So that's unfortunate. But the shaping's good, and lifting it up, you have a very spacious area for our second battle droid, where you can even see that you have a couple of control panels in there. Where on this side you have a very Ninjago-specific print that I'm kind of annoyed has been popping up in LEGO Star Wars a lot recently, since it just is so blatantly from Ninjago with how it's done. But then on the other side, we have a thankfully much more generic print. And if we wish, we can just place our droid down inside after folding his legs so he can sit. And we can just put down the top, or, hang on. Hang on, I know you can fit him, he's just not going in at the moment. There we go. You do have to be careful to make sure that his legs are entirely flush with the studs all the way around, otherwise he will not be able to close up in there with the hatch. But it is really nice that you can fit him in the front, and that you can have this fully closed up with both of your pilot droids inside. Moving toward the rear now, you can see that for the shaping, you do have these tank-like areas on the sides that are just attached with hinges, so those can move up and down. And unfortunately, that's kind of where the shaping ends, because this is entirely flat on the back. And then it just juts out here. So that is unfortunate. I do wish that they had just included just a couple of sloped pieces at the back to make that feel more complete. And then obviously also the half saucer just completely cuts off, again, somewhat awkwardly. And also, just noticing a lot here. You also have this plate at the bottom, where you just have this little black area, and then there's nothing on that. And then here you just have a single cheese slope, and then that's it. The back of this does feel really unfinished, but it does give us a better look at what I do like, where you have the base for the turret, where this is fully tiled off, and it's very nice. It's curved around the back. I really like that area that you really don't get to see very much because so much prominence is taken by the turret, but I really do wish that they'd put more effort into the back of this. So overall, that is the AAT. Much like the Ahsoka minifigure in the set, this definitely has some highlights. It definitely has some flaws. Overall, I think the build for this set is good. I like it. I think it is mostly... It's accurate in all the important ways. There are issues like the length of the cannon and the arrangement of these blasters, and the back is severely under-detailed. That is an issue, but overall, I think this is an all-right AAT. It's not fantastic. I feel as though if you get this set and you're not... I feel as though if you like the AAT, but you're not a super fan of it, and you get this set, you won't be disappointed. However, if you are a big fan of this craft and you know all the intricacies of it, a lot of this will definitely be some major turnoffs, because there are a fair amount of inaccuracies with this build compared to the source material, which, considering that this is the 4th LEGO version of this craft, is unfortunate. But that's really all I have to say about this build, so let's take a look at the extra pieces, and then I'll give my final verdict for the set. I have to be honest, the extra parts here are fairly lame. I like getting a round 1x1 tile in dark blue. I like getting a corner tile in dark blue. The dark gray stud with a hole in it is nice, even though it's becoming very common. And I think the best piece here is probably getting a spare of the lever that is entirely light gray, as that's not very common. And you also get a spring shooter, so, like, again, it's not a terrible selection, but it's definitely not anything to write home about. So, would I recommend LEGO Star Wars Set 75283, the Armored Assault Tank AAT, for $40? I mean, to be clear, there are definitely some really great positives in the set. The 332nd Trooper is fantastic. I also really like the Aat Driver battle droids, and the build itself has some really nice parts. It's great that you can fit both droids inside, and I really love how they did the upper turret, even if that did make it somewhat oversized. And overall, it is a nice playable model, and I think it's a good size for what it is. I think that for this being $40, it does use some fairly large pieces that overall do make it feel like you do get your value there, mostly. And I do have to say mostly, because a very obvious issue with the pricing of this set is that it came out alongside the 501st Battle Pack. The 501st Battle Pack includes 285 pieces for $30. This set includes 286 pieces for $40. That's a bit difficult to wrap your head around when you're trying to justify purchasing this set. And again, there are also definitely some major issues here. That Ahsoka minifigure is far from ideal. The accuracy with some of the sizing is just not there, and the back of this model is borderline unfinished. So I guess it really is a tough choice, where this definitely is a good set, or a pretty good set, but there are also definitely some LEGO Star Wars sets that are just more worth your money. So overall, if you really like the 332nd Trooper, you like those battle droids, and you're not super fussed about the accuracy of the AAT, and you just kind of want a fun little LEGO Star Wars set to have, a fun ground vehicle to play around with, and you can put it on a shelf and it'll look fine enough, then yeah, this is a good set. Albeit one I would probably wait for a sale on, because $40 does seem a little steep in comparison to some other sets. And maybe that could have been alleviated if there was just one more minifigure here, but that's just not how things turned out. Like, in general, I think I could see that value more if they'd included just, like, I don't know, just a normal battle droid on a stap, maybe? That would have been fun. But that's just not what happened, and for what it is, there have been worse deals in LEGO Star Wars. There have been much worse deals in LEGO Star Wars. I mean, I could go to the store right now and see some worse deals in LEGO Star Wars, but there, with sets like the 501st Battle Pack, and more recently some of the other Clone Wars Season 7 sets and the Mandalorian sets, there are other places where I think your money might be better spent than this one. But if you really do have your heart set on getting those minifigures, then this certainly isn't a bad purchase, just an imperfect one. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and for right now, this is Retro Brick Reviews, signing off.